Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Phil the Conquistadork. Today, we're going to talk about Actraiser. Not just any Actraiser, Actraiser Renaissance. For those of you who aren't aware, Actraiser originally came out in 1990 for the Super Nintendo. It was this really rare sort of combination of side-scrolling action-adventure and city civilization builder. Basically, you played a literal god as you were traveling across the different sections of this little world. You would meet different civilizations, different people, and you would help them through their troubles. And their troubles usually involved some sort of weather issue, like either they were living in too snowy of a place, and so they needed your help with the snow. Or they lived in a desert place, and so they needed a little rain. And then, of course, on top of that, they always had to deal with monsters. And so every now and then, you're gonna have to come down to the planet with a sword and kick some ass. Eventually, you make sure that the entire world is safe and secure, and they worship you as the god that you are. Right there, that's kind of a weird thing just to say out loud for any game. But also, this was 1990. First and foremost, that's a long way away from, like, Black and White and some of those other games that played with being a god in some shape or fashion. And second off, it's kind of weird because this was an exclusively Nintendo game, and Nintendo had a reputation for not wanting any religious themes or iconography in their games, and this isn't explicitly like a Christian god, although it does feel a little bit on that side of things. There might have been some sort of, I don't know, some novelty to making it that way, but in any case, there are no crosses, there's no Jesus, although Actraiser 2 could have brought in Jesus if they wanted to. Instead, they brought in a super buff angel, but the less said about that particular game, the better. Now, Actraiser was recently released as Actraiser Renaissance just this year, and it is essentially a great big retread, reskin of the game with some new elements added in, an entirely new level, and they padded it out a little bit. And sometimes that's for the better, and sometimes it's for the worse. But I wanted to bring this one specifically up because in 2019, another game was released called SolSeraph. And SolSeraph was essentially a spiritual successor to Actraiser. It was clearly meant to imitate the same notions of Actraiser. You're dealing with a lot of the same ideas. 1 minute you're on the ground killing bad guys with a sword, and the other you are above ground from literally heaven's height, if you will, and helping the people with their problems. The main difference seems to be that SolSeraph was far more interested in helping people's problems from the combat reality of things. It had very little in the way of building the civilization in a way that wasn't combat oriented. Let me get into that. When SolSeraph came out, a lot of the criticism, including from me, that came out for that one was that the overworld, the strategy aspect of Actraiser had essentially been replaced with a tower defense game, where you have this little village, you're trying to expand, and every minute or so you get another train of baddies walking down the road, and you need to have archers towers and mage towers and barracks, and you know the type of game I'm talking about. You had to have that whole thing set out, and eventually you expand your city enough towards these monsters, the monster generators for all intents and purposes. You expand enough that you can overtake those, and you as a god can come down and lay the hammer down, almost literally, and kill the boss and make that section peaceful for the citizenry. I didn't like it, and I still don't like it. I tried to give it another shot, and I still don't like it. However, the dirty little secret was that when Actraiser Renaissance came out, they also took it in a tower defense kind of direction. Now, when you played the original Actraiser in 1990, it's actually a really short game. I can recall sitting down and playing it as an adult and beating it in a day. If you're really dedicated, you can totally do that. It is not a difficult game, and the strategy elements of it were very simple. Let's just say that. So I understand the need to build up the gameplay a little bit for today's audience. I think people wouldn't. I think people remember certain games and certain elements of games a little more fondly. They add on a little bit of nostalgia in terms of how much they love it, and then when they have to play it again, they start to see what the issues were. And I think that they were very smart when remaking this game in adding some more elements. I'm not a huge fan of tower defense, but I see why it works. And it got me to thinking, why did I really enjoy Actraiser Renaissance while I really didn't enjoy SolSeraph? And I had to kind of sit there and look at them side by side to figure it out. So the similarities: you have got action slash strategy slash tower defense. So we're dealing with the same genres here. We're largely dealing with the same aesthetic. We're dealing with the same general idea of expanding your town, expanding your civilization, and occasionally dropping down and chopping up some bad guys, occasionally taking out bosses, that whole thing. So side by side, they look very, very similar. I would say the main difference between the two comes down to the tower defense itself. Whereas Actraiser, despite the fact that, like I said, they updated it, they made it more padded. Let's just call it what it is. They padded it out with some more action-y elements with the tower defense, but it still feels a little more relaxed, seems to be the word that comes to mind. You're generally, as an angel, going to be floating around, shooting monsters away from the people. There are times, especially if you're trying to make sure your civilization gets as high in population as it can, there are going to be times when you've eliminated certain monster layers, and there really isn't much to do but wait. And that, that can get a little boring. So it has a far more passive feel to it. On the other hand, SolSeraph feels more frantic. In Actraiser Renaissance, you get attacked by enemies coming from all different angles. You get attacked by them, I don't know what the exact time was, but it felt like once every 5 minutes, once every 6 minutes, something like that. So you've got lots of time to build up the civilization, upgrade things, and do assorted little side missions between those fights. When it comes to SolSeraph, it feels like every minute there's another troop of monsters coming your way. And on one hand, that's a pain because it feels more frantic. You're constantly building, rebuilding. You also have to go, there's a resource management aspect to it, with going to chop down trees and get lumber to build the different things that you need in order to defeat these bad guys, which is a little more passively received in Actraiser. There are definitely ways to kind of min-max your resource management in that game, but again, it's a lot more passive. In this, you actually have to build and assign you have to build and assign everything in SolSeraph. It isn't enough just to build a barracks. You've got to get the people from the houses and assign them to the barracks. You've got to get farms to feed the people so you can build more houses, to take the people from the houses and put them in the wizards' towers. That whole thing. And you're constantly moving, constantly defending yourself, and it really doesn't feel like there's a lot of room to breathe at times. There's also not a lot of time to kind of admire your work and enjoy the civilization. And to top things off, as you move forward, you're going to run out of resources, and so you have to kind of decide what buildings you want to destroy behind you to force the civilization forward. And it felt really messy and kind of a bit of a pain in the ass. I don't need my games to be relaxing time wasters or anything like that, although those games definitely have their place. But I also don't necessarily see the appeal of a game that just will not let up, which is how SolSeraph starts to feel. It's just a more frantic, jumping around kind of feel to it. Replacing things, destroying things. It doesn't feel like you're building up your civilization so much as you're literally moving it up a road. And for me, part of the appeal was being able to watch this whole thing grow, which Actraiser Renaissance totally got with introducing a leveling system for your village. It starts out at level 1, simple wooden shacks and that sort of thing, and by level 3, you've got these beautiful, lovely buildings and farms and that sort of thing, and it's actually very pleasing to look at. That's another thing. Overall, I would say that the art direction of Actraiser Renaissance is just better. It just looks better. There are certain parts of the side-scrolling in SolSeraph that I did really like. Sometimes the monsters would be in the background and they're moving forward into your plane, and it gives you a minute to kind of prep for them and be ready to fight them. I liked that. I thought that was pretty cool. But overall, I would say that the monsters in Actraiser Renaissance, they're just retreads of the same monsters you fought in the past, but they look better. There is more variety, as I recall, in SolSeraph. Now, yeah, in Actraiser Renaissance, it does feel like you're fighting the same monsters over and over and over again with a different color, scale on them. But overall, I would say, just in general, Actraiser just looks better. There was just especially when it comes to the cartoons, and by cartoons I mean the villagers. Every now and then they will talk to you, or they will talk amongst themselves, and just the quality of Actraiser Renaissances were better. And frankly, you can't really beat that classic Actraiser score. It's very grand and sweeping. They did a wonderful job reviving it. I love it. I really, really do. And that kind of brings me to the final point with all this. Is it really nostalgia? I've accused people of using nostalgia as a way of preferring one thing over the other in this very video. And am I doing the same thing? I don't think so. I'm trying very hard to be objective here on this, but it's possible. It's definitely possible. I can tell you that I beat Actraiser and actually got into challenge modes. It has a wonderful challenge mode set up. I am still doing that and really enjoying it, whereas SolSeraph, I got so frustrated with the tower defense that I just put it down. I tried twice. I tried to get through SolSeraph twice, and the tower defense is very clunky, it's very unforgiving, and you know what? I'm not even going to say it's unforgiving. It's just unrelenting. It just wears you down and keeps coming at you. It's like the guy in the coffee shop who wants to debate you about something that you know he's wrong about, and if you actually cared, you could probably disassemble his argument and point out why the guy hasn't got a fucking clue, but he just keeps coming at you over and over and over again, and really all you can think about is going home and drinking coffee in your house where there are no guys like that, except for you. You might be one of those guys. Oh well, anyway. When it comes to Actraiser Renaissance versus SolSeraph, I'm going to give everything to Actraiser Renaissance. It just feels better, it looks better, and it is the actual retread of the original 1990 game that me and a lot of old school nerds really love. I would really actually love to hear from some of you who are younger gamers. How does this game feel if you got a chance to play Actraiser Renaissance? Is it fun and kind of retro, or is it just really weak sauce at this point? Like, it feels like a super old game. There's a part of me, sadly, that feels like it must feel kind of weak compared to the sort of games we have nowadays. Maybe it's nostalgia that's carrying all of us who like this game through it. Maybe. I don't know. I just know that if you are given the chance to buy one or the other, they're both around the same price point. Go with Actraiser Renaissance. You're going to have a better time. You're going to get less frustrated. It's just a better game overall. Now, if you can find SolSeraph on a really deep sale or something like that, pick it up. You know, I might be wrong. It might be the kind of thing that scratches an itch that won't disappear even after you beat Actraiser Renaissance. It wasn't for me, but if you're going to go down that rabbit hole, I just can't recommend paying full price. I just can't. So that's it. Actraiser Renaissance, SolSeraph. We solved it! We figured it out.
And, like, Terry is just kind of standing there and is like, his hand just, like, falls off.
Right. Yeah. It's like that scene in Resident Evil Village where Lady Dimitrescu, like, just puts her claw through her hand and all of a sudden your hand just like, slides off. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. And so he gets away, and he's gonna go and Chava wants to come with him for some reason, because I guess Chava's been spending this whole time just going, fuck, I should have been there to help him kill some zombies. I guess. I don't know. He wants to go with him.
This scene is so weird. It's like
it's
so
really weird,
jumbled.